Straighten up and fly right.
Straighten up and stay right.
Straighten up and fly right.
Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
Ain't no use in diving.
What's the use in jiving?
Straighten up and fly right.
Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
The buzzer told the monkey you ought show.
Good afternoon to each of you in Europe, across Canada, and the USA. Welcome to the International Resource Center for Performing Artists. Today's conversation with jazz legend Sheila Jordan, hosted by jazz singer Ori Dagan, will bring us a much needed lift. Thank you to founder and director of the International Resource Center, Ann Summers, for connecting emerging and mid-career artists with such high profile and very real stars of the performing world. As I continue to say, looking at the bright side of our less active lives, many of you found that you now have lots of time to practice, to explore alternative activities and career paths that you might otherwise have to do squeezing it around everything else. Now you have time to look for new insights that will give you that edge when you next audition or perform. I'm looking forward to learning so much from Sheila Jordan today, and thank you, Sheila, for making time for us.
Oh, it's my time. That's time on my hands. That's all I have, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy and a pleasure. And to be with Ori, you know, Ori.
Absolutely.
Like
no, you two are going to have a great conversation. Many of our audience members have just graduated from training and studies, and they need to hear what their potential next steps can and should be, both normally and now. And others are mid-career and faced with a brand new world.
Yeah.
Being prepared will be vital, and everyone will need to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and have ideas on how to give themselves an edge as the world reopens. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, please enter them into the Q&A column. I'll be facilitating those at the end of the conversation. And we're also recording this for posting on the IRCPA website later. Now, let me tell you who's going to be hosting this little conversation. Award-winning jazz singer-songwriter Ori Dagen is taking jazz to new and exciting places. He has a nice big voice, and he's a great improviser. Frequently humorous, his songs have won him fans from Googleable to an anthem for the rhythmically challenged called Clap on the 2 and the 4. His Shakespeare-inspired song Sweetheart, co-written with Nathan Hiltz, was awarded Best Jazz Song at the 2018 American Songwriting Awards. And his 2017 recording, Nathaniel, a tribute to Nat King Cole, was the first visual album in jazz history. And he ended up, because of that, at South by Southwest, at the Tan Jazz Festival in Morocco, and in Seoul, South Korea. Over to you, Ori. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much, Deborah, and thank you so much to the International Resource Center for Performing Artists for inviting me and for including jazz and for being hip enough to invite the hippest lady in the world, Sheila Jordan. This is such an honor and such a pleasure. And above all, I'm really, really happy that more people will find out about Sheila Jordan because she's such a gem for all of us in the jazz world. When we discover Sheila, our lives change. I know she's blushing. So yeah. Sheila, I know. I always try to play it down. I'm playing it down. Okay, let's be cool, as you say. Let's get cool. So to those of you that don't know Sheila, Sheila is an innovator in jazz, and she has been singing this music for 75 years. Sheila's life changed when she heard the music of Charlie Parker, and she decided to devote her life to jazz music when that happened. And she's been singing it ever since. She's always kept the music. The thing about Sheila that's really special is that she's always done it her way, and she never caved in to anyone telling her how to do it. She did it her way, much like that song by Frank Sinatra. I guess, Sheila, you could sing that song.
And I did it my way?
Yeah, because you sure did do it your way, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. And we're so grateful to that. Some of the innovations that Sheila's introduced, she was the first singer to make a thing out of singing bass and voice that is being accompanied only by the acoustic bass. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. She's made a handful of recordings in that format and has inspired many singers around the world to record that way and to perform that way. And in addition, Sheila is one of the first people to introduce vocal jazz education. In the late 1970s, she started a workshop for jazz singing. And we'll talk a lot about that because she has been teaching jazz to thousands of people over the years who have been, their lives have changed. And I'm one of those people. Sheila, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hey, Ori, it's so nice that you would have me, and I'm so honored to be on your program. It's beautiful. You know, thank you for the kind words.
How are you doing in these crazy times, first of all? How are you staying positive?
Well, everybody says, oh, you must be learning a lot of music. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of music on the piano. Have I touched it, looked at it? No. What am I doing? I'm sleeping. That's all I do. I've been so tired because before this happened, I was touring so much, and I don't know. I just, you know, keep going, and you just do it, you know, and you don't feel tired, and you do what you have to do, but you don't realize how tired you are until you come to a stop like this. And I said, oh my God, I'm so tired. All I do
remember
is...
the last time you were here in Toronto was last November, and you were playing like 2 sets a night for 3 nights.
Yeah.
And then we were having, you know, breakfast the next day. And you said, Ori, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so tired. And I said, well, Sheila, I think it's because you're now 91. And, you know, it's easy to forget that because you're a very youthful person and you're so young at heart. But maybe, you know, we do try to look for the silver lining. I'm glad that you're getting a little bit of rest.
Thank you. Yes, I really needed it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and you're up in the country now, right?
Yes, 19 in the mid 80s, I bought a house up here. I was going with a gentleman previously who lived up here, so I would come up here when we were still a couple, and you know, going together, and I would visit him, and I really liked it up here because it reminded me a little bit of my upbringing in Pennsylvania. You know, like the countryside, that part of it. You know, so I don't know. I eventually, actually, it was the music that bought the house. All of the money that I made from my tours that I was doing, even though I was working in an office at that time, part-time, you know, 4 hours a day, I saved all that money and invested it, and it was enough to actually put a down payment on this property. My original house was huge. It was like 12 rooms, man. That burned down. Luckily, I was insured, and I was on tour with the bass and voice actually in Canada. And I came back and found out that my house had burned down, but I was insured. So I don't know. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise because I had another house built, and it's much smaller. But you know, it's very beautiful up here. So I'm stuck up here now. I mean, I can go into the city, but I don't have any desire to because it's scary for one thing, and you just don't know who's going to, you know, cough on you or sneeze on you or whatever, you know. And I don't know if they're doing that in Canada, but here, I mean, we're supposed to be wearing masks when we're out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And a lot of people up in this little town don't do it. They're walking around without masks. So I don't know, it's a little scary, but I don't go out that much when I'm up here now. I just go to the store quickly, buy what I have to buy, and then come right back up to the house. Because nobody's up here, as I said. There's only wild animals, and now that my daughter's here, it's great. So
that is good.
Okay.
I'm glad you're keeping safe, and I'm also glad that you are so modern. You know, I know people that are far younger than you that don't know how to use Zoom and just won't learn and whatever, but you've always been ahead of your time. And you're also, I see you all the time on Facebook. What do you say to those people? that just don't think that think they're too old for this kind of technology?
Grow up.
I love you. That's it. So, so you touched a little bit about growing up in Pennsylvania. So to those not familiar with your life story, you were born in Detroit, Michigan, the same day as Mickey Mouse's birthday in 1928. And then you grew up in rural Pennsylvania with your grandparents before you moved back to Detroit when you were about 14 years old. And then you made the move to New York City in the 1950s to be closer to the music of Charlie Parker. Let's talk a little bit about Charlie Parker and what made his music so special to you.
Oh, my idol, my hero. Bird was, you know, I was always a singer ever since I was a little kid because my upbringing was not happy. It was, I mean, we were the poorest family in town, and my grandfather came from native background. My fifth generation grandmother was Queen IRCPA of the Seneca Nation. So we were name called as growing up. We were called half-breeds. Can you imagine? It was our land. It was my grandfather's ancestors' land, the natives' land, and they would call us half-breeds? Unbelievable. But the point is that, you know, that's what they did, and we were poor, and my family was very much into alcohol, so there was a lot of alcoholism in my family. Actually, everybody in my grandmother's and grandfather's, all their kids were alcoholics, except one. There was only one of the girls was not an alcoholic. Everybody else had a very serious drinking problem. So growing up in that kind of a background and, you know, was not easy. So how did I get by? I got by singing. So I was constantly singing because I was constantly unhappy. My mother was only 17. She couldn't really take care of me. And she was working in the automobile factories in Detroit along with her other sisters and brothers who had moved to Detroit because they could get work in the automobile industry. So that was gigs for them. And since they were not educated past the 8th grade, you know, they had to find something to do. So until I was 14, my grandparents raised me. And I was, as I said, I was always singing because I was unhappy. And my grandfather used to call me, he had a nickname for me. He called me Little Song, because I was always singing. So he called me Little Song. I moved back to Detroit when I was 14. And as I said, when I was in Pennsylvania, I sang on the radio stations, you know, amateur hours. And my grandmother was cool because she knew that I loved to sing. And she would, you know, go out of her way to see that I got on certain amateur programs and stuff. Not that I ever won anything. I did come in second one time in one radio station thing I did, and I got a letter because of course they don't tell your age always on those programs. And I got a letter. Somehow this guy got my address in Pennsylvania and sent me a proposal of marriage. And my grandmother was hysterical. She wrote back and said, well, that's great, but send this in another 20 years. She's only 8 years old. But they didn't know on the air, you know, you sing, and he thought I was older, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, long story short, it was a funny story. But that's what I did. And then I never really knew what kind of music I wanted to sing. But remember, Ori, in those days, when I was coming up, the great composers were head on, like the George Gershwin, the Cole Porters, you know, that all that music was happening. That was the music of the day. And they used to sell these little books, little like a magazine, and it had all the lyrics to the songs. So when we had electricity, sometimes we had it, sometimes my grandfather wouldn't pay the bill. And he would spend his money on booze instead, so our lights would be turned off. But when our lights were on, we had a thing called the hit parade or something like the hit parade. and all of these tunes were played. And so I had to be really quick to learn the melodies of these tunes, which I did. And so anyway, that's where it all started for me. And you know, singing in the school, you know, activities, and being made fun of all the time by the kids in school because they were jealous, but I didn't know that at the time. So, you know, at a point I just quit singing because I was ashamed, and I don't know, you know, it's just too much to have them making fun of me all the time. You know, they'd see me walking into school and they'd go, whoa, you know, like that and stuff like that. So that was not pleasant for me. So
and then you heard Charlie Parker.
And then I moved into Detroit with, you know, at 14 to be with my mother. And I was going to high school, to Commerce and Cass Tech. I took some classes in Cass Tech, some music courses in Cass Tech. And I took typing in Commerce and, you know, work like that. So I knew that I would have to get a job and support myself early in life. And there was a jukebox across the street in the hamburger joint. And I used to put my nickel in and play whatever tune that I thought I'd like to hear. And this one day I saw Charlie Parker and his reboppers, not beboppers, reboppers. And I said, oh my God, I wonder what that is. So I put my nickel in, Charlie Parker and his reboppers, Now's the Time. That was it. I heard 4 notes. I said, oh my God. What is this? This is incredible. And changed my life. And
What are some of the other recordings by Charlie Parker that you've always treasured, just in case some of our listeners here may not be familiar? What should they check out?
Anything that Charlie Parker played. Now's the Time, Confirmation, Barbados, any of Bird, even they came out with a recording of Bird with Strings, and I thought, oh my God, how terrible. No, that's going to be so commercial. What are they doing to Bird? They're going to ruin him, blah, 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 blah. And then I heard All the Things You Are, Charlie Parker with Strings. I think it was All the Things You Are. It was incredible. I said, oh my God, he could play with a washboard. You know, Charlie Parker could play with anything and sound great. And, you know, he's my hero. So
it was beautiful to learn about your relationship. You know, you kind of followed Charlie Parker around.
Yes, I did. I married his piano player. I loved Bird's music so much. I know what I'll do. I'll marry his piano player. Because when I moved from Detroit to New York, I was going with Frank Foster. He was my steady boyfriend. And what a sweetheart he was. And then he went into I think it was the Korean War. So when that happened, it was my time to move to be close to Bird. Even though Bird had been in Detroit just a couple of times. And, you know, and we were lucky enough to be able to go see him, even though we were kids. But there was this little concert hall called the Greystone Ballroom, and they didn't sell alcohol, so we went there. And the first time we ever sat in, I was singing with these 2 young guys, Skeeter Spite and Leroy Mitchell. And Skeeter Spite was probably the greatest scat singer that I ever heard. He was incredible. Never became famous, didn't, you know, just loved to sing. And I heard them sing, and I went up to them. There was this little club in Detroit called, I forgot.
Sudan?
The Club Sudan. And I went down there and I heard them sing, and I said, can I sing with you guys? Because I know those songs. They were doing all Charlie Parker tunes. And they said, yeah, but you got to stop drinking. Because by this time I was in high school, and all the kids in high school were drinking. And with my background, I started drinking, you know. So anyway, I said, okay. So I quit drinking and I started singing with them. It wasn't easy though in Detroit because they were African and they were Afro-American, and I, you know, being a little white kid, it was frowned on because Detroit was extremely prejudiced. So it was hard for us. Most little white kids would have given up, but I didn't. It was too important. I met Frank Foster. I left home when I was 17 because my mother was married to a creep. She had about 7 marriages, and this one was really the creepiest. And I left home, and I was working anyway, so I basically graduated and worked part-time. So, you know, I did okay. In other words, I've been taking care of myself since I've been 17 years old. And after Frank went into, I lived with Frank. We were boyfriend and girlfriend for a couple of years, and then he went into the Army. And when that happened, then I said, time for me to move to New York, be around Charlie Parker. In the meantime, I met Bird's piano player, Duke Jordan, and since Frank and I had sort of like, you know, we were good friends, but it was sort of over our relationship, I started going with Duke. Ended up marrying him. He was unfortunately addicted to this cunning, baffling, powerful disease of drug addiction, like most of the cats at that time were. They all shot up heroin, all of them, when I was coming up. I never did. I never shot up drugs. But they all shot up heroin, and I think they did it. My feeling was a lot of them did it because they thought they could play like Bird if they shot up heroin, you know. Oh, please. And it used to upset Bird. He used to be very upset about the young musicians shooting up, you know. I met Bird, and he died when he was 34 years old. And God, he looked like he was in his 60s. But I met Bird. I remember I went with a friend of mine. She was a friend of Bird's, and she said, I'm going up to Birdland to hear Bird. You want to go? And I said, yeah. And at that time, it was 18 years old in New York. You didn't have to be 21 to get into the bars. You could be 18. So I went with her, and after the set, oh my God, and there I am listening to Charlie Parker, thrilled out of my skull. And she said at the break, she said, I'm going to go back and say hello to Bird. You want to come along? I said, oh, I got so excited. And so I went back with her. He hugged her, he kissed her, and then he looked over at me. And he said, I know you. You're the kid with the $1 million ears. Because that's what he had told this, when I sang with these 2 guys in Detroit. That's what he had told the saxophone player, the older guy that lived there, that got us up to sing with Bird. He told the guys that kid's got $1 million ears. And he looked over at me and he said, I'm talking about you. And then years later, I go to Birdland and hear Bird in person, and he remembered me. And we became friends, you know. He used to come by my loft all the time. If he didn't have a place to stay, or he got in a fight with his wife and he couldn't go home because he spent all of his money on this cunning, baffling, powerful disease of drug addiction, he would come and ask me if he could rest in my loft. And I had a bed that I called Bird's bed. And so Charlie Parker would take a rest. One time he came by and I said, Bird, you can't come in until I get my parakeet in his cage, who I taught to say, hello, Bird. And the bird's name was Tori. That's bird in Japanese, I believe. And he said, oh, no, it's okay. I don't care. I'm just tired. I don't care. Leave Tori out. It's okay. I said, he's going to bother you. It's okay. I don't care. I said, okay. So I let Bird in. He came in. He went over to his little cot that I had for him, to Bird's bed, and he lay down. And, of course, the minute you lay down, my bird, Tori, is flying on you. He's on you. So he landed on Bird's leg. And he said, hello, Bird. And Bird jumped up and said, looked at me. And said, what are you, I was in a little kitchen area. He said, what are you, a damn ventriloquist? I said, no, Bird, that's Tori. He said, oh, he didn't believe that I had taught this little parakeet to say, hello, Bird. So Bird laid down again and put his head back, and the bird this time went right up to his mouth, put his beak in Bird's mouth and said, "Hello, Bird." And Bird jumped up. He said, "God damn, that bird does talk." Yeah, he was very special to me. So, you know, he knew that he could come to my house at any time and there would be a place. There was never any romance. I was like his little sister. He treated me as such. And Charlie Parker came up one time with 2 LPs under his arm. It was Theme and 4 Variations and Stravinsky's Rites of Spring. He said, "I want you to hear this." And I said, "Oh my God." And they were both beautiful. So I heard those and I never forgot that, you know, hearing those 2 classical recordings. But Bird was brilliant. He was very smart, very brilliant, and very kind. And contrary to what people say, Bird was never mean. He never yelled at anybody. I remember one time after, you know, I got together with Duke Jordan, I said I married Charlie Parker's piano player so I could be closer to Bird's music. That's not really true, you know, sort of. But anyway, I remember I was at a sound check one time at the old Birdland on 52nd Street. And Bird and Miles, it was Bird, Miles, Tommy Potter, Max Roach, and Duke on piano. And Miles said, "Man, why don't you get rid of that piano player and get John Lewis?" And Bird looked at Miles. He said, "Miles, this is my band. When you get your band, you get John Lewis. My piano player is Duke Jordan. Now, if you don't like that, then you can leave." I never forgot that. And I sat there and I said, "Oh my God." Well, Miles just shut right up, you know. But it was great.
You learned a lot about music from Bird being your mentor. And of course, you listened to many other musicians, which helped form your style, which is kind of very, very instrumental, the way you sing. But if there was one singer in jazz that you learned a lot from, would that have been Billie Holiday?
Yes, that's right.
Tell us a little.
The thing about Billie Holiday was, first of all, since I didn't really, you know, when I had money, I didn't buy singer records because I was a Bird freak. You know, I was an instrumentalist freak, and Bird was my idol. But Billie Holiday, there is nobody in the world that has the emotion, to me, sings with the emotion and the passion that Billie Holiday sang with. Sarah Vaughan, who has a voice like Sarah Vaughan? You know, come on. My God, that's the most magnificent voice I've ever heard to this day. And third, Ella Fitzgerald. Nobody scatted like Ella Fitzgerald. Even to this day, nobody scats, for me anyway, scats like Ella Fitzgerald. She was the greatest scat singer to me. And so I knew them. I knew what they did. They were wonderful to hear and inspiring. But, you know, my heroes were bebop, like Charlie Parker. He was my idol. So I learned all of that stuff from them. Yeah, you know, learning tunes. And like I tell singers when I teach, a lot of singers, they'll come to workshops and they'll do a tune that some singer who's, you know, like known, a famous singer, and they learn the song from that singer's record. And they never learn the song right. And I tell them, if you're going to learn, if you like this song and you want to sing this song, then you got to get the original music and find out every note exactly the way it was written. Learn the exact melody of these tunes that you want to sing, the way they were written, the exact melodies. Because learning the exact melody of tunes are the stepping stones to improvisation. That's one of my little phrases.
Yep.
These are the stepping stones to improvisation. knowing what was there. If you're going to go all over the place when you first start singing, where are you going to end up? You know?
Absolutely.
Right?
A lot of our listeners are actually in the classical realm, so they've never improvised before sometimes. Can you give us any insights about improvising for someone who's never tried it before?
Yes. Learn the original melody of the song first. Every note, note for note. Learn the original melody. After you learn the original melody, then you get, if you can't do it, then you get somebody to put down chord changes for you. And then you have these chord changes, you know, with the rhythm, and it's great. And then after that, then you get a little guideline going from each chord. And that guideline is in your head. And that is what you hear, and that is what you improvise on, these guidelines. That's the way I do it anyway.
Cool.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 ba 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 da 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 da. You know, so I'm following that guideline. One thing we as jazz musicians, singers, which I like to call us musicians, is timing. Anything else can be off. You can be flat, singing, all of that can be happening, but for God's sake, don't let your timing be off. Timing is of the essence in jazz music. It's very important, so always have good timing. If you have a problem with timing, my suggestion is go take some lessons with a great drummer, a drummer who really knows the music, really knows the swing, and has a conception of good timing. And then you'll be okay. So take some lessons with a drummer. Very important. Timing is number one.
Timing is number one. Now, another important part of the jazz tradition is going, when it's safe to do this again, going to a jam session.
Yeah.
And when you were coming up, you went to lots of these different jam sessions, whether it was in Detroit or New York City. So maybe tell us a little bit about your experiences at jam sessions, and maybe just some tips for anyone who wants to try that.
Yes. First of all, when I went to jam sessions, the first time I went to a jam session, I had no clue. You know, I didn't know what key I was singing in. And of course, especially for women singers, because we usually do not sing in the original key of these tunes. Guys are different, as you know, Ori. You know, you can usually sing in the original key, but female singers can't, or at least I couldn't. And I don't think most of us can. So those piano players and bass players don't always know these tunes in other keys. So if you're going to go to a jam session, it's okay to take your lead sheet. Just make sure you take a couple of copies, one for the bass, one for the piano, and one for the drums in your key, okay? Or make sure that a song that you pick, you can sing in that key if you're a female singer. You know, make sure that you're okay with that key. Some tunes, I can do rhythm changes and, you know, blues and most. But if I'm going to sing a beautiful ballad, like Lush Life, you know, I don't sing that in the original key. So it would be very difficult for me to try to get into what this song was about if I can't sing it in the key that I sing it in. You know what I mean?
I do. I just wanted to tell you that I sing things in girl keys an octave down. So
well, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, but in other words, I mean that for all singers, men and women singers, you know.
Yeah.
But
I want
mostly
to,
women more, so.
I've heard you say this before, and I love when you talk about scat singing and how not everybody needs to scat sing and why anyone should scat sing. So give us your wisdom on that.
I have said and share at workshops that there's a scat virus going around. And all of a sudden, instrumentalists, I think it's instrumentalists more than anything, have been telling singers that they're not a jazz singer if they don't scat. If you don't scat sing, you're not a jazz singer. So I tell singers, this is your reply. Ask them, the instrumentalists, when they say that to you, do you think Billie Holiday was a jazz singer? There's no way in hell they're going to say, no, she wasn't. No way. And so then your reply is, well, you know what? Billie Holiday never scat sang. And then they say, oh, yeah, you know, then they look a little, oh right, okay, you know. But I understand that Billie Holiday could really scat sing. She just never did.
Right.
And my old house up here, I had an original house, a huge house with many rooms that burned down. And one of the things I had was somebody had given me a tape of Billie at a party scatting. And it was incredible. And when my house burned down, I lost two things. Bill Evans' Chord Changes on a paper napkin from the Embers, Club Embers in New York City on Broadway. He had written down for me on that paper napkin, his Chord Changes on If You Could See Me Now. And I lost that, and I lost the Billie Holiday scatting, so at this party. But, you know, but the thing is I don't think that singers should get hung up on scatting. If you're not comfortable, it's like singing a song that you don't dig. You're singing it because, you know, you think people want to hear it or it's popular or whatever. And the same with scatting. You know, you scat because you think people want to hear, but you really don't like it. You're not comfortable. Don't do it. Why would you do something you don't dig doing? Don't do it.
If you don't feel it, don't do it.
That's correct. You got it.
I remember. So speaking of not scat singing, on your very first release, Portrait of Sheila, you did not do any scat singing. And you know what? It is widely considered to be one of the greatest jazz singing albums, let alone a debut of anybody. And it was recently reissued on vinyl. And wouldn't you know, I happen to have it right here.
That's it.
So this is it. Okay, my friends, get it. Check it out. It's everywhere. Portrait of Sheila. And so you got that. That happened thanks to a guy by the name of George Russell. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. I met George Russell in this little club in the village. I found a gig 2 nights a week working in the village, and it was fine because I did an office job, you know, in an advertising agency. And I worked there I started working like half a day because it, you know, paid my bills. It paid my rent and my food and bought my daughter's clothes. She was a little kid at the time. And so, but I needed a place to sing because there was this need, you know, as I said earlier, you know, it was part of my heart and soul. It was the music, was part of that. And so I found this club called the Page 3, and it paid $6 a night. Did I tell you this already?
No. You need to repeat this.
Good. I didn't want to repeat it if I already told you. So I found this place in the village called the Page 3. And I went down there and I auditioned. And they paid, as I said, $6 a night. By the time I paid the babysitter $4, by the time I took a taxi home, I think I had $1 left, because in those days, it only cost $1 to get from 7th Avenue and 12th Street up to my house on 18th Street and 8th Avenue, okay? So I only had $1 left, or a little less, but that's not why I did it. I did it because I needed to fulfill this need to sing. And at that time, I was very lucky because there were the regular piano player during Tuesday through Sunday was Herbie Nichols. Now, I worked on Tuesday nights, and then Monday night was session night, and that was a different piano player, and that was Johnny Knapp, and that was on Monday night. So I did Monday night session, jam session night, and then Tuesday night I did the regular, with Herbie Nichols. It was an incredible, oh my God, I had an out-of-body musical experience with him. I don't remember when the world was young, I was singing with him. And I started to float over my body. I don't know, you've had those, have you had those?
I have, yeah.
Yes, you don't have many, oh, well, I don't anyway.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They're very unusual. And I was floating over my body and looking down at this person standing there singing, but I was above it. I can't explain it. It was incredible. And it was with Herbie Nichols, who was a man of very few words. He spoke very softly, didn't speak very much, but was an incredible player, and I'll never forget that. And so I worked with him on the Tuesday nights, but on Monday night, John Knapp was a wonderful piano player, and he was a student. No, that was Jack Riley. Yeah, Jack Riley was there too. Jack Riley was played sometimes on Monday nights also, but the bass player was Steve Swallow, and he was playing acoustic bass, and I had never heard Steve Swallow before. So on the Monday nights, Steve Swallow was on acoustic bass, and on piano was either Johnny Knapp or Jack Riley. So this one night I was there, and it was Jack Riley and Swallow, no drums. And this gentleman came in, and his name was George Russell, and he was the teacher of Jack Riley. So he had come in to hear a student, Jack, play the piano, see how he was doing, accompanying. And of course, Jack accompanied a stripper, a comedian, a dancer, and me, and a blues singer, and me. And I was called the new note in jazz. So George came in and heard his student, and then after I sang, he came over to me. I had no clue who George Russell was. He said, "Where do you come from to sing like that?" I said, "I come from hell, man." Thinking, who is this? Who is this? And he said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Well, I would love to visit hell with you sometime." And that was Pennsylvania. My growing up with the whole thing with the native and alcoholism, and my grandmother was still alive at the time. So I gave him my telephone number, and Swallow said, "He's a great guy, man. He's a great composer. He's a genius," which I found out later he certainly was. So I gave him my phone number, and he called me up not too long afterwards. He said, "Would you like to go and visit hell?" I said, "You mean Pennsylvania?" He said, "Yeah, you said you come from hell. So I wanted to know if you'd like to go back there and visit." I said, "Yeah, well, my grandmother is still alive. We could go back." So he drove me back to Pennsylvania. And my grandmother loved to drink too. So there was this club that was the private club that was only for minors, and you had to be a member to get in. It was called the Bund, B-O-U-N-T, Bund. And so that's where all the coal miners went. They get their paychecks, and then they go and they drink, and they were all very serious drinkers, alcoholics, I would presume, but they had hard lives working in the coal mines. 6 days a week, being underground like that. A lot of explosions. It was not an easy job. But anyway, so we went up. My grandmother was still alive, and we went up, and nobody was in the club except this one guy sitting at the bar. And he was an out-of-work coal miner. And all the miners were home because they didn't have any money because they weren't working. And so my grandmother introduced us, and she went on like we were these famous, you know. And I said, Mom, I'm not famous. George Russell's famous, but I'm not. You know, I work at an office, for God's sakes, and I sing in a little club in the village, but I'm not famous, okay? Because I hadn't recorded or anything at that time, and I never considered myself famous anyway, not even to this day. I don't think about fame. What the hell is fame? So anyway, he looked at me, the out-of-work coal miner looked at me and he said, well, do you still sing You Are My Sunshine, Jeannie? My nickname was Jeannie at that time because they made fun of my name as a kid because it was not that common. Called me Shiva, Queen of the Jungle, and you know, so I went by my middle name, which was Jeanette, and shortened it to Jeannie. So I was Jeannie. Not in school, because I had to go by my first name, which was Sheila, but out of school, I was Jeannie. So, and I said, no, I don't sing that anymore. And he said, why not? And George Russell looked at me and he said, why not? And I said, oh, why would I sing that? He said, well, you sang it when you were a kid. I said, oh, that was different. He said, no, come on. He went over, there was an out of tune, really out of tune, upright piano. He sat down and he started to play it out. It was totally out. My grandmother literally pushed him off the bench and said, that's not the way it goes. That's not the way it goes, George. And she threw him off the bench and she sat down and she started to play it. And I sang with her. I sang You Are My Sunshine with my grandmother from the good old days. And we got back to New York City, and not too long afterwards, George called me up on the phone. He said, are you free anytime today? It was a weekend, so I wasn't in my office working. I said, yeah. I said, yeah, my daughter is with her friend, and she'll be there for the afternoon play, and I'll pick her up later. He said, I'd like you to hear something. So I went down to James Street. That's where George was living. He had a studio down there, and he said, sit down. So I sat down in a chair. He said, I want you to hear something. So he started playing this incredible, oh my God, it was all over the place. Then he stopped. He said, sing. I said, sing what? He said, sing You Are My Sunshine. I said, what? Well, you're going to play for me, right? He said, no, sing it alone. I said, no, I can't do that. He said, what do you mean you can't do that? You did it when you were a kid. I said, that was different. It's no different. Sing it. So I sang it. Then I came into the second chorus and he started adding in little things.
I just listened to that before the interview on the record review. It's gorgeous. You Are My Sunshine. Now, the next thing I want to ask you about is your very prolific way of singing just with acoustic bass. Where did you get that idea, dear Sheila?
Well, I got it when I was studying with Lenny Tristano. That's before my daughter was born. Max Roach and Charlie Mingus knew I was looking for a teacher, and they recommended Lenny Tristano. So I went up to Lenny, and there was this bass player up there, Peter Innes, and another student bass player, and I just loved the sound of the bass. I loved the bass. Maybe I was frustrated bass player. I don't know. Anyway, I used to want to do ideas with bass. Somehow it just happened. I heard the bass. I heard it. I loved the freedom. I loved all the, all that space. And that's how it started. It actually started when I was studying with Lenny.
Yes.
I wanted that recording, the Blue Note recording. I wanted that to be bass and voice. And Alfred Lyons, because George Russell got me that record date. He got me Portrait of Sheila. I was the first singer on Blue Note because they were not recording singers at all. But George took this demo that he had made of me and played for them, and they liked it. And so then I said to George, well, I'd like to do the bass and voice, me and Swallow. He said, no, not ready for that. I'm going to do guitar, bass, and voice. I said, I never sang with guitar before. And that wasn't common at that time. I don't even know if Ella had recorded yet with the guitar trio.
Not at that time, no.
No, I don't think so. So that was very unusual.
Until this happened, that the first bass and voice full-length album, and this was in 1977 with Harold Anderson, correct?
Yes.
Beautiful album, everyone.
Great bass player from Norway. So anyway,
yeah.
the Blue Note album happened, and that was it, you know, thanks to George Russell. But we also, as I said, we recorded You Are My Sunshine for the Coal Miners on Riverside, and you can hear that on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and get the out of you, or just put my name in, You Are My Sunshine, it'll come up and you'll hear it. You'll hear what George did.
You know, I think one of the most amazing things about your career has been how you've taken your time. That's something that I've really learned from you, is to be patient and to be real and to just let it happen and not to force things. I mean, that's how you are when you sing, but it's also how you've lived your life. It's how you've lived your career. And even though you recorded this amazing, critically acclaimed album, Portrait of Sheila, in the fall of 1962, you spent another 12 years just focused on raising your daughter, and you were still singing, but you were just taking your time. And, you know, you've now, you know, up until March, you were the busiest singer in the world, pretty much. You were touring constantly. So a big lesson to all the singers out there. Something to learn from Sheila. Dedication is the key, and just let it happen, right?
Absolutely. Don't give up. Don't give up something you love. You know, why would you? Just because you're not making, what is making it, man? If you can open your mouth and sing anywhere, whether it's a session or a little gig that pays nothing. I mean, the fact that you're singing, you know, and get another job, an extra job on the side, like house cleaning or office work or whatever, waitress or whatever, you know. But
well, you had your job. You retired from your day job when you were 58 to continue working on music. Is that
61?
61, oh my. Amazing.
Yeah, I had an office job until I was 61 because I knew that at 61, 62, I could get Social Security and then maybe I could work more full time. But, you know, I had a great boss, so he let me go. I do these tours of California and Europe, these little week tours, a couple of weeks, and I took my vacation, always used my vacation to, like, you know, tour, to do the music.
You're also, you've written some really beautiful songs. Of course, you've sung many, many other people's songs, but you have written a few good songs, great songs, and one of them that I'd really like to highlight is called The Crossing. And surprise, surprise, I also have that one. This is very hard to find. This beautiful album called The Crossing. So this song, The Crossing, is about how you healed yourself from substance abuse.
My recovery, yes, my recovery from alcoholism.
Tell us about it.
Cocaine addiction. I was on a dry drunk for 8 years. And then I started snorting a little cocaine now and then. And as I say, it wasn't an everyday thing. But I didn't realize that. Addiction is addiction, whether you do it once a week or 20 times a week or once a month. If you really feel you need to have it, then you got a problem. And I had a problem. And I knew, well, of course, I was on a dry drunk. I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't like, I changed, what they say is I changed seats on the Titanic. In other words, I went from alcohol to snorting cocaine. So same thing, a drug is a drug is a drug. I had a spiritual awakening. I remember I was in my apartment where I am now on 18th Street, and I was on the couch, and I was coming out of I wasn't drinking. I hadn't drank in 8 years. I was on a dry drunk, as they call it in program, but I was snorting cocaine once in a while. And I was coming out of this, whatever it was, from snorting cocaine, no sleep. And I had a spiritual awakening. A voice came to, swear to God, it said, I gave you a gift. And if you don't take care of that gift, I'm going to take it away and give it to somebody else. And whoa, I said, where did that voice come from? I had no idea, Ori. And I jumped up and I ran over to the telephone. It was just like it was guiding me. And I called up an organization, which I'm not at will to mention because we don't mention it. We're not, it's against the principles of the program to mention. Anybody that wants to know can get in touch with me on email or Facebook, and I will write to them and tell them what it is. But I jumped up, and I heard that message, and I called this organization, and I told them everything. I said, I haven't had a drink in eight years on my own, thinking they were going to say, oh, that's wonderful. She said, you know what she said to me? Why would you want to do it on your own when we're here to help you? And I said, yeah, that makes sense. Why would I want to do it on my own? And I've been in program ever since. And that was 34 years ago that I called them.
And thank God for that. You wouldn't be here right now,
Oh, no, not at all. No, I'd be dead. I'd be gone.
Thank God for that. I wonder if we have some questions.
Okay, yes. Oh, yes. You should have stopped me.
That's okay.
Hi, Deborah.
Hello, I'm back. I don't have any I think people have just been listening raptly and nobody has put in any questions yet. So if you have any final words you would like to share with us before we close out, we would love to hear them.
My final words, don't give up. Keep singing. Whatever turns you on, do it. Support it until it can support you, with the understanding that it might never support you, but you don't give up something you love. So don't give up. Do keep it alive. Keep this burning desire to sing or play an instrument or dance or act or whatever. Keep it alive. Don't give up. Support it.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay?
Beautiful. And for everyone, I wanted to mention, this is backwards now, but it's called Jazz Child. And it is a biography of Sheila by a great singer and vocal jazz educator named Ellen Johnson. You can actually get it at Sheila's website, SheilaJordanJazz.com, where you can also find all of her recordings. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, and you can also get it on Amazon.
There you go.
You can get it on Amazon also.
All right.
Thank you so much, Ori. I love you.
We love you.
Thank you, Sheila Jordan, and thank you, Ori Dagan. You've been very generous with your sharing of information for the International Resource Center for Performing Artists this afternoon. It gives jazz artists and all artists the support and directions they need as they consider how to move their careers forward. And as I said earlier, we all need to support each other in this fluid future we are facing. To that end, I will say that many arts organizations who make significant contributions to our cultural life need your support today, from large ones to the small ones like our IRCPA. Encourage those around you to make whatever small donations they can to the arts. You only need to look at the explosion of stellar content on the web to understand how important the arts are to our mental and emotional well-being and how starved our performers are to share their gifts. Please consider a gift to keep these connections alive. Go to ircpa.net/donate. I will also direct you to ircpa.net for news about the rescheduled encounter and concert, now scheduled for October 23 and November 6 respectively. And thank you to Ann Summers again for making all of this happen. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Ori, for fascinating and entertaining discussion. And for all of you out there, keep healthy and safe. Thanks again, and bye for now.
Okay. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Ori. Love you,
Bye.
Ori.
Much love. Love you, Sheila.